Hollywood thought it knew Matthew McConaughey. The Texas grin, the unmistakable drawl, the romantic comedy star whose name had become box office currency. Then he walked away. At the height of his commercial success, he rejected a $14.5 million offer and spent nearly 2 years risking irrelevance rather than keep selling a version of himself he no longer believed in. The gamble could have buried his career. Instead came True Detective, Dallas Buyers Club, and an Academy Award. Yet only days after he first stepped onto the set of Dazed and Confused, his father died suddenly, the man who had believed in him long before Hollywood ever did. Now, at 56, time carries more weight, and the moments that matter seem to pass more quickly. His career has little left to prove. After decades spent showing the world how far he could go, what has become too precious to leave behind? Before we begin, honor Matthew McConaughey with a like, a quiet tribute to the choices, losses, and people that shaped the man behind the fame. Instability taught Matthew McConaughey some of his earliest lessons about love, discipline, and consequence. Born on November 4, 1969, in Uvalde, Texas, he was the youngest of 3 sons, Michael Rooster, adopted brother Pat, and Matthew. Their mother, Mary Kathleen Kay, taught kindergarten. Their father, James Donald Jim McConaughey, had pursued football before building an oil pipe supply business that sometimes came close to financial trouble. Kay and Jim married each other 3 times and divorced twice. In green lights, Matthew remembered confrontations that could turn frighteningly physical. In one, Kay struck Jim with a telephone and broke his nose. Another family argument escalated around the kitchen before ending in a chaotic mess involving a bottle of ketchup. Yet Matthew has never described the house as a place without love. "I was scared at the moment," he said of one fight, while insisting that he never doubted his parents loved each other or their sons. Discipline could be severe. At 10, a temporary Cracker Jack tattoo brought a harsh punishment from his father. He was usually first to wear through the knees of his toughskins, and for 2 straight seasons, he led his under-12 soccer league in red cards as a goalkeeper. Complaining about old shoes earned Kay's warning, "Keep griping, and I'll take you to meet the boy with no feet." In that family, words such as hate and can't carried consequences. Excuses were not treated gently, and neither was self-pity. Belief arrived just as forcefully. At 4, struggling in the Llano River, Matthew remembered Kay shouting, "Swim, or you're going over the falls." He fought toward the bank, and later remembered the experience as an early lesson in what happened when fear left no comfortable option. In 1977, a photograph of Matthew, holding a Little Mr. Texas trophy, went up in the family kitchen, and for decades, Kay told him he had won. Only years later did he enlarge the picture and discover the engraving, Little Mr. Texas Runner-Up 1977. He has since wondered whether he would have developed the same confidence if he had grown up believing he had finished second. After the family moved to Longview around 1980, Kay gave him another complicated lesson. When Matthew struggled with a 7th grade poetry contest, she showed him a published poem and told him that if he understood it and it meant something to him, he could use it. He did, and won. As an adult, he called it what it was, straight plagiarism. Years later, those memories sat differently beside the confidence Kay had worked so hard to build in him. Conviction had given Matthew courage. Adulthood would teach him that confidence still had to answer to truth. Adolescence tested whether that confidence could survive embarrassment. Severe acne worsened after a skin product irritated his face, and Jim tried to pursue legal action over the damage. By senior year, Matthew's skin had cleared, and classmates voted him most handsome, undercutting the very claim his father had hoped to make. Much of his upbringing carried the same contradiction: humiliation beside confidence, punishment beside affection, uncertainty beside fierce loyalty. Matthew worked, earned strong grades, played golf, tested boundaries, and absorbed different lessons from each parent. From Kay came audacity and invention. From Jim came blunt standards about honesty, effort, and commitment. Matthew later summarized part of the family code in simple prohibitions. Do not hate. Do not lie. Do not say, "I can't." Those words did not make his childhood gentle. They gave it structure. At 18, however, the structure of family would disappear almost overnight, and the boy raised to believe he could handle difficulty would have to discover who he was when no one familiar was close enough to answer for him. Distance stripped away nearly everything familiar when Matthew McConaughey left Texas in 1988 as an 18-year-old Rotary exchange student in Australia. He had imagined beaches and freedom. Instead, he landed in Warnervale, New South Wales, with a strict host family, a curfew, and little of the independence he expected. Decades later, he called it a year of hell. He had no car, little money, no girlfriend nearby, and none of the friends who normally reflected his identity back to him. "I was on my own, and I didn't have any of my friends to bounce stuff off," he later said. With comfort stripped away, he built routine wherever he could. He became vegetarian, sometimes eating an entire head of iceberg lettuce with ketchup, ran roughly 6 miles a day, and dropped to around 135 to 140 pounds. He moved through jobs at a bank, a barrister's office, boat repair, photo processing, construction, and as an assistant golf pro. His letters home could stretch to 16 pages, filled with questions about faith, success, character, and what kind of man he wanted to become. "I was a foreign man in a foreign land, quite lonely." At one point, a hoped-for change of host family fell through, and his frustration boiled over. He damaged a bedroom door. He could have abandoned the exchange. He stayed. Years later, McConaughey said that if one period most shaped where his life eventually went, it was that year. "A year when I found myself because I was forced to." Conviction replaced convention after he returned to Texas and enrolled at the University of Texas at Austin. Law initially appeared to be the responsible path, but the longer Matthew imagined the years ahead, the more strongly storytelling pulled him elsewhere. He transferred into radio, television, film, and called his father Jim, expecting resistance. After a pause came 5 words that would follow him for decades. "Well, don't half-ass it." The sentence was permission, but it was also a standard. Film school still offered no guarantee that anyone would ever put Matthew in front of a camera. He worked at Austin's Catfish station, signed with a local talent agency, and even earned money as a hand model. Then, in 1992, an encounter at an Austin hotel bar changed the scale of his future. Matthew introduced himself to casting director Don Phillips, who was working on Richard Linklater's Dazed and Confused. Golf started the conversation. An audition followed. Wooderson had been intended as a much smaller role, and Matthew borrowed part of the character's swagger from his brother Pat. Linklater kept expanding the part. On McConaughey's first night on a movie set, he improvised 3 words that would become inseparable from his name. "All right, all right, all right." He later remembered them as the first words he ever spoke on the first night of a job he had not yet understood would become his life. Then promise and loss collided within days of each other. 5 days after McConaughey began working on Dazed and Confused, Jim died of a heart attack in 1992. Matthew returned to Houston and grieved with his family. After the wake, they encouraged him to go back to work because they believed that was what his father would have wanted. More than 3 decades later, Matthew still called the death the biggest moment of becoming a man. Jim had seemed permanent, a source of discipline, permission, and protection, and suddenly he was gone. Matthew later described the realization with painful simplicity. "There's a certain safety net that I've always had behind me that's gone." His father would never see Dazed and Confused grow into a cult classic, A Time to Kill turn his son into a star, or the Oscar that would come more than 20 years later. McConaughey has said that pieces of Jim remain in the men he plays and in the way he carries himself. The man who had told him not to half-ass his choice disappeared just as the first real door opened. Hollywood was about to discover Matthew McConaughey. Jim would never see what came through that door. Success arrived with a force McConaughey could not have predicted. 4 years after Dazed and Confused, A Time to Kill turned him into one of Hollywood's fastest-rising leading men. Contact, Amistad, and EdTV followed, giving him the kind of momentum young actors spend years chasing. By the early 2000s, however, the offers were beginning to look increasingly familiar. The Wedding Planner, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, and Failure to Launch made him one of romantic comedy's most bankable stars. The checks grew, the range did not. Hollywood kept rewarding the version of Matthew McConaughey audiences already knew how to buy, until repeating that version began to feel more dangerous than walking away from it. The decision in front of him was expensive and uncertain. Keep accepting enormous checks for familiar work, or disappear long enough to force the industry to imagine him differently. He chose uncertainty. Silence became the cost of that refusal. McConaughey stepped away from familiar offers for roughly 20 months, and eventually rejected a deal that had climbed to $14.5 million. His career was still profitable when he made the decision, which made the gamble more severe. Serious roles might never replace the money he was leaving behind. I think me doing that sent the message through Hollywood. "Oh, McConaughey is not bluffing," he later recalled. Eventually, different roles began to arrive. The Lincoln Lawyer reopened the door in 2011. Mud and Magic Mike followed in 2012. Dallas Buyers Club completed the reinvention in 2013, and on March 2, 2014, McConaughey won the Academy Award for Best Actor as Ron Woodroof. True Detective and Interstellar confirmed that the so-called McConaissance had changed the way audiences and filmmakers saw him. Even then, success refused to remain permanent. The Sea of Trees was booed at Cannes. Gold earned about $14.9 million worldwide against a reported $20 million budget. White Boy Rick and The Beach Bum also struggled commercially. Escaping the romantic comedy box reopened his career. It never protected him from another disappointing opening weekend or another film that failed to connect. In 2020, The Gentleman restored some of McConaughey's screen magnetism, while Greenlights transformed decades of private journals into a memoir that reached #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. His relationship with the University of Texas came full circle when he joined the faculty as a professor of practice after years of teaching there as a visiting instructor. Major partnerships with Lincoln and Wild Turkey gave his unmistakable voice a life beyond film. In 2025, The Rivals of Uzziah King premiered at SXXW, while The Lost Bus placed him inside another story of survival and brought members of his own family close to the production. By then, Rise, Fall, and Comeback were too simple for the career he had built. He had embraced sudden fame, grown restless inside success, walked away from millions, rebuilt his identity, reached the Oscar stage, absorbed commercial disappointments, and kept finding new ways to work. Dallas Buyers Club remained the most celebrated turning point. Hollywood saw the performance and the statue. What the career timeline could not show was what that reinvention had demanded from the body that carried it. Triumph hit a physical transformation far harsher than the Oscar stage revealed. To play Ron Woodroof, McConaughey reduced his weight from about 183 pounds to roughly 135, losing close to 50 pounds over months of preparation. He followed a tightly controlled diet that included fish, egg whites, and tapioca pudding, and stayed away from the Texas sun for about 6 months, so Ron would appear pale and diminished. McConaughey later described the discipline in one blunt word: militant. The body still registered the strain. At his lightest, 5 push-ups could leave him sore, and running roughly 30 feet could make his legs tighten. The most unsettling warning came earlier. McConaughey said that when he reached about 143 pounds, his eyesight began to deteriorate. By then, the transformation had moved well beyond costume, posture, or appearance. Ordinary physical capacities were changing, while he continued asking his body to move toward Ron Woodroof. Preparation also pushed him inward. McConaughey spent long stretches at home, reading, writing, and tracking the process, describing the experience as an adventure internally. He listened to recordings of Woodroof, studied his history, and met members of Ron's family, who opened scrapbooks, tapes, and diaries to him. Those materials gave him more than mannerisms to imitate. They placed Woodroof inside the AIDS crisis, a period shaped by fear, misinformation, prejudice, and fierce battles over access to treatment. In the film, Ron begins from ignorance and hostility and is forced by illness to learn faster than he ever expected. McConaughey described the man he studied as beginning as a two-bit cowboy and becoming, in his words, a damn scientist. That arc required more than an emaciated silhouette. McConaughey had to understand how survival could overturn a man's assumptions, how fear could become education, and how someone pushed toward the margins could begin fighting for people he once would not have understood. The weight loss was the most visible evidence of the preparation. The performance depended on what he learned while getting there. Recognition arrived on March 2, 2014. With the Best Actor Oscar in his hand, McConaughey thanked God, his mother, Camila, and their children. Then the speech turned to Jim. Matthew pictured his father somewhere above him, with gumbo, lemon meringue pie, a cold Miller Lite, dancing in his underwear. More than 20 years had passed since Jim died. Then came the line that carried all those missing years into a single moment. "To you, Dad, you taught me what it means to be a man." The man who had given Matthew permission to take that first real risk was no longer there to see where it led. Dallas Buyers Club had demanded nearly 50 pounds, months of discipline, and a body pushed into weakness. Now the statue was in Matthew's hand, and the father whose words had helped send him toward film could exist in that moment only through memory. Camila and their children were part of the family he thanked from that stage. Long before that family existed, fame had already begun changing the terms of Matthew's private life. In 1996, A Time to Kill turned the 26-year-old Texan into one of Hollywood's fastest-rising leading men. Sandra Bullock was beside him when the transformation happened. Their connection continued after filming and became a real relationship, just as cameras, magazine covers, and new opportunities were multiplying around both of them. Sandra understood the pressure because her own career was accelerating too. To audiences, they looked like one of the defining young Hollywood pairings of the decade. Two stars suddenly being watched almost everywhere they went. Privately, they were learning how quickly a relationship could become public property once fame arrived. McConaughey had only recently been an actor trying to get noticed. Now strangers wanted to know who he was dating, where they were going, and what every photograph meant. Their time together unfolded while both careers were moving faster, schedules were tightening, and privacy was shrinking. A bond that might once have developed quietly now moved beside premieres, interviews, and the expectation that every public appearance required an explanation. The romance ended without scandal, and what survived was respect. "We dated for a while after A Time to Kill, and we're still friends," Matthew later said. Bullock remembered him warmly as well, once calling him a powerful force in her life. His admiration remained unmistakable. "She's a woman. She could run a country," he said years later. McConaughey also resisted rewriting former relationships simply because they had ended. Looking back, he asked, "Are you putting white out over all that beautiful time together?" Sandra remained part of his history, without becoming an enemy or a regret he needed to erase. The romance stopped. The respect did not. Years after both had moved on, their words about each other still carried warmth rather than resentment, an unusually quiet ending for a relationship lived under so much public attention. Ashley Judd, another A Time to Kill co-star, was later included among the women McConaughey seriously dated, though the public record remained far quieter. Janet Jackson became the opposite. Their names generated a larger romance story than McConaughey later acknowledged. Asked what had happened, he laughed and reduced the mystery to one evening. "We went and had dinner, That was sort of it. Fame could turn dinner into a headline before the people involved had decided what it meant. By 2025, he had a phrase for that stretch of his life. All stops, no stays. Connections came, some became friendships, and the public often supplied its own ending. McConaughey kept moving from set to set, city to city, relationship to relationship. Each chapter gave him company. None had yet become the home he was beginning to imagine. Then Penelope Cruz entered his life. Penelope Cruz entered McConaughey's life during Sahara, and this time the story was more than rumor. By 2005, they were publicly together, appearing at premieres and moving through an international publicity cycle that made them one of the period's most watched couples. Cruz was already a major European star, expanding her Hollywood career. McConaughey was one of America's most recognizable leading men. Their success gave them extraordinary opportunities, but it also kept both of them constantly in motion. Film sets, premieres, separate projects, and flights across continents repeatedly pulled them toward different places. Photographs preserved the smiles, arrivals, and red carpets, while the practical reality was less glamorous. Two international careers were trying to protect a relationship inside schedules neither could fully control. One project ended and another began. One country gave way to the next. Time together had to be found between professional obligations, and the same success that brought them together kept asking both of them to leave again. In 2006, it ended. Representatives for both actors confirmed the separation, with reports at the time emphasizing professional commitments and time apart, rather than betrayal or public conflict. McConaughey never turned Cruz into a villain in the story of his life. Penelope had belonged to a serious chapter shaped by affection, work, distance, and the pressure of being watched, while both careers remained in demand. Their relationship crossed premieres, travel, and long stretches dictated by separate projects. When it ended, there was none of the public wreckage Hollywood often attaches to famous breakups. By his mid-30s, however, Matthew had begun speaking about the future in more specific terms. He wanted a lifetime lover, a best friend, and a mother-to-be. Attraction was familiar. Companionship was familiar. So was the experience of caring about someone and still watching circumstances pull two lives in different directions. He had known relationships that mattered, and he had learned that their value did not disappear simply because they ended. What he still did not have was the lasting home he increasingly wanted. Then came a dream he would remember for years. In it, McConaughey was 88 years old. He saw himself as an old bachelor. No wife stood beside him. Yet he had children, many of them. Fatherhood had always mattered deeply to him, and the dream placed that desire in front of him while leaving another part of the future strangely empty. 88. Children in his life. No wife. The image stayed with him because it offered part of what he wanted and withheld the rest. There was no guarantee that marriage would arrive, and no reason to force the next relationship to satisfy a deadline simply because time was moving. "I quit looking," he later recalled. 3 months later, he met Camila Alves. By then, Matthew knew what connection felt like. He knew what distance could do, what public attention could distort, and what an ending did not erase. He had spent years moving through relationships without turning the past into bitterness. The future he wanted still had no fixed shape. Then the search stopped. Camila entered his life. Love had found him before. This time, he would begin building something that did not have to end when the next schedule began. 3 nights after Matthew and Camila first met in 2006, they went on their first official date. Years later, his memory of seeing her remained unusually vivid. He had not thought, "Who is that?" He had thought, "What is that?" From that point, McConaughey said he no longer wanted another woman or imagined having children with anyone else. Levi was born in 2008, Vida in 2010, and Matthew and Camila married at their Austin home on June 9, 2012. Livingston followed that December. The relationship developed around an unusually deliberate protection of time together, including Matthew's later revelation that since marrying, they had avoided spending more than 9 consecutive days apart. Hollywood had spent years teaching him how quickly an opportunity, a role, or an image could change. At home, permanence was built through a different discipline, returning to the same people again and again. Pressure changed shape once 3 children became part of every decision. Matthew and Camila had enjoyed their life in Malibu, but a family crisis brought them to Austin for several weeks and made the contrast between the two places difficult to ignore. Camila noticed that Matthew seemed more himself in Texas and asked whether he wanted to move back. He did. They relocated in 2014, trading the rhythm of Los Angeles for a family life organized more closely around church, sports, meals, relatives, and the routines of home. Parenting brought its own negotiations. Matthew has described himself as more naturally inclined to say yes, while also speaking openly about tough love, independence, and respecting the privacy of his children. He and Camila have tried to measure success by character rather than celebrity, and Matthew has said that the real merit lies in the people their children are becoming, and in how the family loves one another. He has never presented the household as perfect. Both parents adjust, disagree, learn, and continue. Marriage became a practice carried through travel, careers, children growing older, and 2 strong personalities repeatedly choosing a life that required both of them to remain present. Fatherhood also gave Matthew a measure of success that Hollywood could not provide. A film could open well or badly. A performance could be praised, ignored, or rewarded with a statue. Family offered no opening weekend, no ranking, and no applause to confirm that the important things were going right. The evidence arrived more slowly, through the lives taking shape around him, and the relationship he and Camila continued building as those lives changed. For a man whose career had been defined by visibility, box office numbers, magazine covers, reviews, and awards, some of the work that mattered most was becoming the work almost no audience would ever see. In 2022, that family life was interrupted by an ordinary step. Camila was walking down a staircase when loose fabric caught around her shoe and sent her down. She later appeared in a neck brace and told followers she was okay, describing it as a silly fall that had become a much more serious neck situation, with recovery still ahead. One step had changed the rhythm of the household. Years later, Matthew's description of their marriage remained strikingly simple. "We have a love that we never question." Camila had become his partner in raising 3 children, moving a family back to Texas, supporting career risks, and building a life whose value was measured increasingly by who was there when the workday ended. His own body carried another record of how quickly ordinary movement could leave a lasting mark. That vulnerability was already written into Matthew McConaughey's own body. A jet ski accident left him with a long wound running from the center of his forehead toward the right side of his head and into his hairline, an injury he has said required 78 stitches. He also recalled that a veterinarian stitched the wound. In Greenlights, he disclosed something broader: 4 concussions after falling from 4 different trees, 3 of those falls occurring during full moons. The jet ski injury left a visible scar. The falls added another category of damage to a body already familiar with risk. Millions knew the relaxed Texas grin, the easy drawl, and the actor who seemed almost physically comfortable inside danger. His body carried another record: 78 stitches across the head, repeated head injuries, and the accumulated evidence that adventure had consequences, even when the man telling the story could later laugh about how he got there. Chance offered a smaller reminder in July 2024. McConaughey posted a close photograph showing his right eye completely swollen shut and captioned it with only 2 words: "Be swell." There was no elaborate account attached to it, only the photograph and the joke he chose to make about it. The swelling passed. The older marks remained part of a much longer physical history. Across different decades, the stories varied in seriousness, but they belonged to the same body. the one audiences had watched run, age, transform for roles, and carry an image of almost effortless physical confidence. By his mid-50s, those stories landed differently. Green Lights contains a line that now carries unusual economy. "We all have scars, we gonna have more." McConaughey kept working, traveling, teaching, and taking difficult projects. But the life waiting beyond the work was larger now. There was Camila. There were Levi, Vida, and Livingston. There were students in Austin and responsibilities that did not exist when he was 18 and alone in Australia. Risk had once helped him discover himself. Later, it had helped him remake a career. Now it follows him home to people who expect him back. The appetite for experience remains. So do the reasons to return. At 56, Matthew McConaughey still acts, teaches, builds businesses, and remains deeply tied to Austin. But his career no longer depends on proving that he belongs in every room Hollywood opens. The University of Texas, where he graduated in 1993, now lists him as a professor of practice in radio, television, film. Austin FC still carries his investment in the city's culture, while he and Camila continue building ventures such as Pantalones Organic Tequila. His screen career is moving too. After leading The Lost Bus in 2025, McConaughey spent part of summer 2026 in Italy, working on Netflix's Positano with Zoe Saldana. On August 10th, an Alamo Drafthouse Theater in Austin was officially renamed the Matthew McConaughey Cinema. The Rivals of Amziah King, in which McConaughey plays a beekeeper and musician who sings and plays mandolin on screen, is set for an August 14, 2026 theatrical release. Asked about the theater honor, he returned to something larger than celebrity. "Movies," he said, "are also about who you watch them with, and the memories you carry home." The paychecks, labels, and comebacks once decided much of the pressure around his career. Now he has greater freedom to decide which work, people, and places receive his time, and which ones are worth coming home to. That freedom has also moved beyond movie sets. Matthew and Camila's Just Keep Livin' Foundation now reaches more than 3,000 high school students across the United States, using fitness, nutrition, gratitude, and community service to give teenagers structure before crisis defines their choices. After the 2022 tragedy at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, the town where Matthew was born, he and Camila created the Green Lights Grant Initiative to help schools pursue federal funding for safety and student well-being. A phrase Matthew once used to keep himself moving became a program helping young people build resilience. Grief in his hometown became practical work aimed at protecting other families. At UT, he teaches film students at the university, where he once considered taking the safer path into law. His days now move through movie sets, classrooms, school programs, business meetings, and the Austin community he chose to call home. At 56, the freedom he once fought to earn is increasingly measured by where he chooses to spend his time, and by who may still benefit from it after the cameras move on. At home, the passage of time is visible in Levi, Vida, and Livingston. Levi has already begun stepping into the entertainment world, including appearing alongside his father in The Lost Bus. Matthew's mother, Kay, also appeared in the film, placing 3 generations of the family inside one project. The contrast reaches back to the beginning of Matthew's own career. Jim McConaughey died only days after his son began working on Dazed and Confused. More than 30 years later, that absence still sits inside the way Matthew talks about becoming a man. The family code Jim left behind: effort, honesty, responsibility, refusing "I can't," did not disappear with him. Matthew carried it through fame, failure, marriage, and fatherhood. Now Levi, Vida, and Livingston are old enough to begin deciding what parts of that inheritance will become their own. Levi's first steps into acting make the continuity especially visible. 3 generations are now appearing inside one story. While the standards Jim gave Matthew continue through a family Jim never had the years to watch grow this far. McConaughey has spent much of his life moving, leaving Texas for Australia, crossing movie sets and continents, walking away from millions, rebuilding a career, and following work wherever it led. Fatherhood has given that movement a different weight. His children no longer belong to the future he once imagined. They are growing into lives of their own while he is still beside them. He can offer advice, disagree, step back, watch them take risks, and remain close enough to see who they become. The Oscar will remain. The films will remain. So will the stories people tell about the risks Matthew McConaughey took to become himself. But inside his own family, another inheritance is still unfolding. A father's words carried by a son, then handed forward, without knowing exactly what the next generation will make of them. Jim never lived to see the life his son built. Matthew is still here to watch what his own children build next. If his story has stayed with you, leave a few words for Matthew McConaughey below, and tell us which chapter of his life you will carry with you.